Hello and welcome to our webinar on cyber threat hunting, the first in our series of our MDR Quarterly updates in partnership with Sophos. My name is Adam Myers and I'm the Sales Director here at CyberLab, and hopefully this series will be brilliant for you to sort of gauge for new customers, maybe sort of the ways that we can help your organization with MDR, but equally any existing customers, give you an idea of sort of how the product is evolving and sort of your investment and how things are playing out over the period of those contracts. In terms of the agenda, we're going to be reviewing the threat landscape. So in the build up to Christmas, typically we see quite a lot of activity from threat actors as we sort of look to go on holiday. They tend to get quite busy. So we'll be reviewing today a little bit around how we can prevent that from happening and some tips and tricks in the holiday period. So with that 24/7 monitoring, we can tuck into our mince pies with a little bit of peace of mind. There'll be an update on MDR as well. So we've got some great dashboards, which I think will be really great to sort of see how they have been progressing over the last couple of months. And then it's also a Q&A. So we've got around 20 minutes at the end. But I can see your questions as you pose them to our guest today. So feel free just to drop those in. There should be a text box where you can just add those questions in. And we want to keep it interactive. So make sure that you're fielding those questions. So introducing our guest today is Alistair MacRae from Sophos. So Alistair, do you just want to tell us a little bit about what you do on a day-to-day basis at Sophos and how you help our clients?
Perfect. Thanks, Adam. Yeah, so I'm Alistair MacRae. I'm one of the managers for the sort of EMEA region, so Europe, Middle East, Africa. I predominantly look after a sort of team of about 5 or 6 as part of the sort of customer-facing element of the MDR service. So if you've ever spoken to one of my team about maybe you were looking to purchase MDR or you've maybe even had an early warning, we also do early warning. So that's kind of a collaboration between labs and threat hunting. We also do the early warning reach out. I've been with Sophos about 3 years, part of the team for about 3 years. I started being a manager last year. We've got about 25 global pre-sales as part of our team, and then back end we've about 500 in the SOC. My background, as you can probably imagine from kind of the roles that we do, I'm a forensics incident response kind of background, so catch your bad guys, all that kind of geeky stuff.
Amazing. Well, yeah, it's going to be really good. Looking forward to this session. So yeah, we have about an hour. So we'll run through our agenda today. So the current threat landscape, can you maybe just expand to us a little bit, Alistair, in terms of what you're seeing? Because in the run up to Christmas, we do see a sort of a booming sort of activity, don't we? Where the Christmas period, we're tending to go on holiday and sort of, like I said, that nice Christmas downtime. But that obviously has sort of consequences with a real spike in activity from a sort of cyber risk perspective, doesn't it? So could you just maybe expand a little bit on what you're seeing, because I know we've got all the Sophos Lab side of things. What is it that you're seeing in sort of those early warning systems that you have as well?
Yeah, sure. So in terms of kind of some of the telemetry we get, it's not just MDR customers. So we will also pull anonymized data and telemetry into labs, into Sophos labs for research purposes. So your customer data kind of gets mitigated. It's anonymized. It actually helps us. So we've not got some sort of preconditioned hunt when we're looking at something. We're not biased. So we're actually looking at bad guy techniques, not necessarily what documents Alistair got on his laptop, if that makes sense. So when we're seeing bad guy tools, techniques, and trends, that telemetry comes into labs. It's anonymized. Similarly, the sort of telemetry that we're getting in the MDR service as well into the SOC, although into the SOC it's not anonymized. We need to know which customers getting that dodgy file downloaded or whatever it might be, so that we can do the kind of triage and response piece. But in terms of the threat landscape, when we're hunting, we're looking for tools, techniques, and procedures. Like you say, Christmas time is, seasonal shifts in techniques, seasonal shifts in even the attackers. We sometimes see, attackers go on holiday for Christmas as well, believe it or not. They take religious holidays, all of that lovely stuff, and guarantee, sure as eggs, come January, someone's back, and that uptick again in the attack and the techniques that you will see from a particular region, a nation state, a ransomware gang. They do follow those seasonal trends. We can almost predict it, to be fair. So from an early warning perspective, that telemetry comes in, it's anonymized. Some of you may have had an early warning from some of my team at some point in your Sophos sort of life. That telemetry gets quite interesting when we start looking at the tools or the techniques that the bad guys are using. They're not always malware either. I'm going to just point this out. So we will often see maybe an initial dropper or an initial tool that the attacker wants to use to get a foothold. It's nearly always an unprotected machine as well. So it doesn't necessarily have Sophos on it. And guarantee you've probably got a machine somewhere in your organization that you don't know about, that the bad guy can find in some way. Or it's an unpatched machine, unpatched server, typically external facing. You didn't realize, again, maybe you inherited it and suddenly there's, what's that server doing over there? Oh, didn't realize we'd got that. So when we start looking at the techniques that the bad guys use, they often pivot quite quickly because they want to go undetected. So the chances of using crafted malware, droppers, C2 tools, remote command and control utilities and all that, they're going to get detected. So the idea is they use those as quick as possible for a shorter period of time, gain a foothold on that compromised machine, and then start using basically the operating system against you. So they're not going to look like a bad guy. They're going to look like just a normal IT admin doing normal IT admin kind of things. So that kind of makes sense.
That's quite difficult to detect, isn't it? So if you're using the sort of tools that the business already uses, that's very difficult, isn't it, to spot as a
It's
struggling.
very difficult. Yeah, you're almost going down the behavioural route there. You're looking at, actually, is this typical of a who is this user? What type of user is this? Is it an admin or is it just a normal user? And why are they doing it at, I don't know, 2 a.m. in the morning versus a command line when actually all Alistair ever does is he comes in on a Monday morning, he opens his Outlook and a web browser, and that's probably about it. So when we start looking at those kind of behaviors and techniques, we're actually like, that's a bit weird. That's not normal user indicative behavior, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So this kind of graph gives you an idea. So this one was early in the year. This one is protracted over time. The attackers are using kind of droppers and a few little bits to get a stage into the environment. But then, as you can see, they kind of shift and they start dropping persistent scheduled tasks. They're using what we call active lol bins or living off the land binaries. That could be something as simple as RDP, command.exe, PowerShell.exe, whatever it might be as part of the operating system. So at some point, the dropper hit the tool that they use to get in. But then as the time progressed, they start basically looking like an admin and start living off the land and using those kind of tools and techniques. This is kind of another one. It's not as noisy. So as they start to craft techniques, could even be a different type of attacker. They use different tools, tools, techniques, and procedures. They're trying to look a little bit more normal. They don't want to be as noisy. If you can imagine, noisy detections get easily spotted by either yourselves, the SOC, or whatever. So if they can use crafted techniques that actually can go undetected, very small, they don't need to shower the environment with a technique to try and get a compromise. Typically a pen test, and I'll show you as we go on, you'll see the difference between, these are real attacks, you'll see the difference between a pen test. But slow and low, very quiet, going undetected, it looks like an admin, if that makes sense. So this was an active C2 at the beginning, and then we saw basically payload exfiltration. With this one, this was quite interesting. They basically used safe mode to basically try and kill the endpoint agent. Bear in mind, this is a Sophos detection, so the bad guy didn't really get anywhere. We still see the telemetry, but the actual agent was actually doing all the blocking correctly, and as we would expect that device to be protected. This next one's quite interesting. So as you can see, the timeline technique, maybe go away, try something else, pause, wait for a few days, come back, try something else. This next one's quite interesting. It all happened within probably a space of 24, 48 hours. So again, if I try and do something slow and low, or I find a particular vulnerability or a way in on the machine, and I can make use of it right here, right now, if I were to try and maybe spread that timeline out, the chances are I may get noticed again over a period of time. But if I can do a bit like a smash and grab, I break the window, I reach in my arm, I grab what I want, and I go, and I can do it as quick as possible. Those techniques, the time over distance monitoring that might trigger some behavioral, again, is probably going to get circumvented. In this particular case, it was a credential theft, exploited a public-facing server, and then privilege escalation as well. So had normal credentials or whatever credentials were running on the particular device at the time, probably weren't admin level or didn't have enough privilege. And once the attacker got onto that particular device, actually able to escalate privileges, gain an admin, and then move laterally inside the environment. All kind of makes sense so far.
I think it's interesting though, isn't it, that you've got slightly different techniques, like you said, just like undetected, trying to just fit in, and then also this sort of really quite
Absolutely.
aggressive approach. In my mind, I
Yes.
always think of it's always an aggressive approach because for the impact it has. But typically, what you also see is trying to be minimalist and trying to fit in. And it's interesting to see different techniques and what we spot in terms of that telemetry and how you sort
That's
of get
right.
things. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting when they start to pivot to just use Windows tool, Windows operating system commands or or Linux operating system commands. Um, as you know, antivirus, air
Yeah.
quotes, relies on signatures and technique and behavior and all that. As soon as it shifts to being, well, this is just normal admin, this is just normal Windows commands, net use, PowerShell, and then you're running a command line in PowerShell. I don't know if it's an admin, I don't know if it's a pen tester, I don't know if it's a bad guy, or somewhere in between. It gets really difficult to tell. But based on, again, on, as I say, on behavioral, it's not indicative of Alistair at 2 a.m. doing this kind of thing on a command line. We've probably never seen it before. It could be an admin doing some update on a server out of hours. That's not uncommon. But we kind of then look at detections prior, detections following that particular event,
Yeah.
and then go, actually, pretty sure that's not an admin. We've not seen them do that before. So this is kind of give you an idea. And these are the sort of things that you'll find in your excuse me, in your SIXA, your XDR. You can go into look in threat graphs. So we get a very similar thing in terms of threat graph. We can look at the parent to child process, what command lines were being ran at the time, albeit, as you can see, some of it gets kind of anonymized. So I literally did a copy and paste out of the early warning dashboard. But in your central dashboard, you'll have this information. You'll have it in your malware and PUAs report. You'll have it in your threat graphs. And if you've got XDR or if you're in the MDR, so these are the sort of tools that the MDR analysts are pulling when they're doing those live queries and live response actions as well. So as you can see, this was all living off the land commands. There's no malware involved here at all. And you can see where they then started to steal the credentials and drop them to a text file. Again, then it gets a little bit more complicated. But basically, they're doing an enumeration, trying to figure out what it is that they've landed on, and then also start to look at, again, using normal Windows commands to gain escalation, move laterally, figure out are they on a domain, all that lovely stuff. So that isn't malware. That's just a bad guy who's now on. And then once he's on, he can then probably land his own tools as well. He might want to set up an RDP, might want to do persistence, do some stuff internally. It's all there to be detected, basically.
And Alistair, is it once they gain access to the systems, they're almost pivoting on the fly, or is it like it's a pre-planned thing where they think this is a typical customer, we've done our research, we
Yeah,
think approach will work, or is it we're gonna go with the flow almost and see what tools are available, what defense mechanism they've got, and they're then just kind of steering it depending on the setup, I guess, or the systems in
I,
place.
I guess it depends on the type of attacker. If they're opportunistic and they've landed and they don't know where they are
Yeah.
and they want to see, sometimes they'll dwell, so they'll wait. They'll do some enumeration. They'll look and watch to see what documents are flying around, just exactly the sort of the state of the land, what sort of architecture are they in, where are the shares. If I'm on Alistair's machine, what's he got access to. I'm going to watch and wait, and I'm going to have a look and see what he does.
Yeah.
If I've landed on a server, eggs is eggs. Probably that server's going to have some juicy stuff on it of some form. It depends, and then also it depends on their MO, their modus operandi. Are they out for ransom, or if we look at sort of like a nation state, they may be going after some very laser targeted thing they want to get hold of,
Yes.
intellectual property, design, something that's unique to that organization that they've targeted. So it varies, and it also varies on what they've landed on at the time as well.
Yeah. And I guess if you are a certain type of organization, you probably know that you hold certain sensitive information. So like if you're part of like critical national infrastructure, there's obviously maybe you're more prone
Correct.
to types of nation state attacks where they want a
Absolutely.
specific thing, or if you're a
Yeah.
university or things like that, you might hold something that somebody wants, which is obviously the crown jewels or
That's
something.
You raise a good point there about universities or education in general.
Yeah.
I can guarantee you, going back to that kind of patterns of time over the year, seasonal shifts, I can guarantee you ransom attacks increase during school return when they're just about to get ready to do their exams.
Right. Well,
So we see an uptick in ransom attacks on education just before it's either you've got all your coursework saved on the school, college, university servers.
yeah.
You're about to submit your material. You're about to sit and do your exams. Guarantee you that trend will uptick come kind of March, April, May towards education.
So there's no excuse of the dog ate my homework or anything like that.
No,
It's more.
the hacker stole my project. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go. So as I said, kind of just to kind of give you another idea as we sort of progress through. So again, there's there's a lot more colour to this one. This was a very short timeline, less than I think it was less. Although it looks like it's over 2 days, it's actually not. It started just before midnight and it finished just after midnight, so it looks like it's on 2 days. But this happened in less than about 15 minutes, literally from midnight to the following morning. So you can see here we've got impair, so that's where they're trying to kill the Sophos agent. They're deleting shadow copies. They're trying to drop their own tools and drivers. They're trying to ransom the box, and they're trying to basically kick it into safe mode as well. All of those attempts failed,
Hmm.
but that was a very crafted, less than probably less than 15 minutes in that attack. Let me show you what a pen test looks like, or these kind of like testing tools that you can get, Ixia, Tipping Point, all those kind of things where you can just literally fire tons of kind of malware and stuff, or when a pen tester's trying to shower a particular target or a device. So we can always spot a pen test. They're noisy unless your pen test is really good and they're doing a very similar sort of crafted attack. But there's often certain other giveaways that we can spot where we know it's a kind of a pen test. But hopefully that kind of gives you an
Yeah.
idea. Some of the telemetry. As I say, this telemetry is coming into Sophos Labs all the time, and the labs research teams are looking at the new the tools and techniques that the attackers are using. Um, some customers that we have, probably some of yours, for example, you had maybe 6 InceptX XDR, and
Yeah.
you had an early warning and thought, actually, we should probably get some 24/7 monitoring, hence the MDR sort of journey.
Yeah.
But if you've got Sixer, if you've got XDR, these kind of tools, these techniques, these sort of patterns of behavior that the bad guys are doing, you're going to be benefiting from that sort of Sixer XDR capability, the adaptive attack protection. So again, if we're looking at something like this, where it's short space of time, very
Yeah.
interesting techniques, that AAP is going to kick in and go, that's a bit weird. Why is that process being run, or why is that technique being run on a command line? You can either manually invoke AAP, turn it on for 24 hours if you're not sure what's going on that machine. You can extend it, or as I say, if you're sort of SOC MDR customer, it's going to kick in automatically in some of that sort of situations anyway.
Yeah, and I guess over the holiday period, I know there's certain modes you can set up for MDR, isn't there, where like that
Sure.
24 by monitoring, but like you might be a little bit more, look, I want to enjoy my Christmas and I want to enjoy my 6 weeks holidays if I've got access to that. Like, is there ways that you can change the setup or
Yeah,
configure that to be like, look, I want to be a little bit more hands off and I don't want to be
sure.
so sort of reliant on my skill set during this period, because there's sort of those hybrid models, isn't there, and what you can do. Do you see a bit of a shift
Absolutely.
in things like that as well?
Yeah, we do. It comes down to what you as a company are comfortable with, how hands-on or hands-off you want to be. I would like to sit and eat my Christmas dinner without the phone going off.
Yeah, yeah,
So in your central dashboard, you go into the MDR menu settings. You can then put it into, I don't know if you're probably aware of the collaborate with authorize or full authorize modes. Even in collaborate, we're not just going to sort of let the bad guy do his thing. If we see something suspicious, like some of these, if we're looking at, let's say, that particular type of attack where the bad guy's trying a few things in a short space of time, we're not going to sit back and go, don't know what that is,
yes, yeah,
or we need to check with company X to see if that's legitimate. Um, we're going to basically contain that machine until such time we can get hold of you. Um, in a collaborate with authorize, you're basically saying, look, Sophos, if you can't get hold of me, deal with the incident, kick out the bad guy, clean up his mess, make sure he can't come back and do it again. So you've got that ability, and you can change that as many times as you want. Yeah, you're not sort of stuck with, once you've set it, that's your option. You can
yeah,
change it whenever you want. It could be you go and collaborate with authorize up to, let's say, I don't know, Christmas Eve, and then think, right, we're all out, put us in full authorize, go enjoy your Christmas, come back on, sort of on the Friday the 27th, or unless you're taking the whole of Christmas off.
yeah.
When you get back, put us back into collaborate with authorize, or whatever fits your posture really.
Yeah, I guess that's good though for, like, I don't know, we just Christmas parties and stuff like that. You might have where you're all out
Absolutely.
of business. Again, you're very vulnerable. Whether someone can
That's it.
spot that, but there's lots of
That's it.
scenarios.
As I say, it is a seasonal thing. We do watch the bad guys, and I can guarantee a certain ransomware group, they will take the religious holiday between Christmas and New Year. They will then come back around about the 14th of January, very specific, about the 14th of January, because that's the end of their religious holiday, and then it will start.
Right. Okay.
We will watch those. We will watch those attackers literally start ramping up again.
Yeah. So is it just a huge spike that you see, like you walk in on that day, and it's kind of like
It,
that's, you see that like
pretty much, yeah.
yeah.
If
Wow.
I kind of go back to that first screen, I mean, even though, as you can probably see, this was a little while ago, but this was August to September, so schools are off,
Hmm.
universities are off, and then you come back in September,
Yeah. Wow.
and that jump. That's what I was actually doing this talk, literally kind of. September, October, and I was showing this, and it is literally that spike. That's where the universities and schools and everyone else comes back, just to
Yeah.
kind of give you an idea. But yeah, so as I say, kind of, we look at timelines, we look at sort of predictive indicators or predicators. It gives us a kind of an idea of this is about to happen, this is the lead up, this is that predictive indicator. We look at tools, techniques, and procedures. Is it normal? Is it Alistair doing something? Is it an admin? Or are we actually looking at a bad guy doing kind of, as I say, living off the land binaries, that kind of stuff? We're matching techniques, tools, techniques, and procedures that the attackers do. And then obviously from that, we can take the required response, whether that's you're a 6 or an XDR customer, we do an early warning. Incidentally, early warning is not kind of to replace the MDR service. We're not a 24/7 from an early warning perspective. It's when we're tracking a bad guy, and we're seeing him maybe targeting a vulnerability or a specific technique, we
Yeah.
can do a bulk outreach as a courtesy. But if you're an MDR customer, you're obviously getting that benefit 24/7.
Yeah, good bit of peace of mind. All right, nice. So I think that nicely sort of transitions us into the next sort of topic. So around MDR dashboard. So for me, this is, I think, great for the evolution of the product, I think, especially, and sort of seeing how it's sort of grown over the period of time. So I think for a lot of stakeholders who already have the service, I think this is great now to see how these dashboards are going to help their organization, because I can see this becoming part of a board report. I can see it really sort of gives
Sure.
value into what the solution is delivering. And maybe in those early phases that wasn't available. So I think now being able to see this, and hopefully from this series, you'll be able to sort of see how things are evolving, and we want you to also steer that. So if anyone on the call, I think if you want to ever feed this back or want to understand a little bit how we can maybe paint a picture of what's coming down the line, reach out, because I think this is really good to see how the product roadmap's evolving. So yeah, MDR dashboards, exciting.
Yeah. So this actually this was a bit of a brainchild. We, as I say, as part of my team, we're 25 odd global team pre-sales for MDR, and as part of our quarterly business review, we lock ourselves in a room, and you could argue we're kind of our own worst critic, if that makes sense. We lock ourselves in the room, we tear the service apart, and we say, right, what can we change? What can we improve? What can we leave alone? Sometimes, if it's not broken, don't fix it. But one thing that we realized was, especially when customers were coming to say, okay, I need to justify the spend to the board. I've already had the conversation. We're an MDR customer, or we have been for maybe a year, 2 years, and we're coming up for a renewal. So various scenarios, but I need to justify the spend to the board so I can get the stakeholder buy-in. And can you show me what you do on a day-to-day basis from the SOC? It's okay. We understand when there's an incident or when there's something suspicious or malicious happening. You contact us, you raise a case, all that lovely stuff. But what are you doing on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah.
So we locked ourselves in the room. We thrashed this about, and we weren't very good at shouting about the day job, if that makes sense. So all the lovely hunting that we do proactively, all the kind of detections that come in that don't really make anything sensible because it's not a bad guy. It is actually Alistair on Monday morning forgetting his password that he changed on Friday. Just normal humdrum noise, basically, day-to-day stuff.
Yeah.
But the SOC analysts, they get the detection come in, three failed attempts from Alistair logging in. That's a bit weird. Let's have a quick look. Is it normal? Is it something suspicious, malicious, or whatever? So when we're doing these proactive hunts, we weren't shouting about them. We weren't showing you the cases that didn't get escalated. So a lot of unescalated cases where the SOC analyst takes a look and goes, no, that's Alistair being an idiot. He's forgot his password again. Close the case. So lots of unescalated stuff that we investigate, that we look at, was actually going unreported. So this dashboard came about. And again, you'll find it in your central MDR dashboard. This is kind of, I think this is version 1, so you may even have version 1.2 now. There's a few extra widgets that you might see in your central. They came about the last few days. But the upshot is, we wanted to kind of show you the health summary, a bit like doing a health check. So if you've ever had an XDR6 or XDR health check, we do a similar thing for the MDR, showing that what you've got deployed, tamper protection turned off, all that kind of stuff. We would typically do this in a proof of value report, which would have to be ad hoc. You might do it as part of a health check, but now having this on the dashboard, we can actually show you instantly the state of your environment, what the SOC see as a kind of a bit of a risk or not. We can also show you the SOC uptime, so the analyst coverage. And in my little graph here, in my little diagram, I basically put it to the year, so you could see if we had any SOC outage. SOC analyst was off sick, a bit like me at the moment. My throat's going. So basically, 24/7 coverage, state of the sort of service, if you will, and then the amount of sort of threat hunting and investigation or intelligence effort that the SOC have done in the last year as well. You can pivot these dashboards and widgets, so you could have it 30 days. This is as a whole across the whole SOC service. So I think we're at 25,000 customers now. I think we're the second largest MDR SOC provider. So 25,000 customers. Last year, we did about 8,000 hunting hours, if that makes sense, across all those customers. Of those hunting hours, we carried out 221 hunts, and from those hunts, we found new detections. So new techniques where the bad guy might have changed a tool set, or hang on, what's that new malware? What's that new tool dropper, whatever it might be. So it's worth doing these hunts, because if we just sat back and went, these are the detections, these are the rules, we'd never find new stuff. So by doing proactive hunting, I don't know if you've ever done a kind of 10 at 10, I'm going to open up my dashboard, have a poke around for 10 minutes at 10 o'clock while I have a coffee. These are the sorts of things that the SOC analysts do. Some of these hunts are minute by minute, they're automated. And then some are very ad hoc. We're seeing threat intelligence come from labs. There's a new ransom gang on the block. They're using new tools. Let's go see if we can
Yeah.
find any of that in some of those existing customers. Or this is the best one. I love this. It's off a hunch. It's like, I wonder if this command line does something suspicious. Let's see if it's being used somewhere. We don't know the bad guy behind it. We don't know anything, but we're working on a gut feeling or a new latest and greatest vulnerability. I wonder if
Yeah.
and we can kind of hypothesize and then do a kind of a hunt from that.
Yeah. And you talk about the 25,000 customers. Obviously, that's growing every time I hear that number. I think it was 16,000, and then jumping up at an alarming rate, which is
Yeah,
brilliant. I guess there is that strength in numbers, though, isn't there? Where you're
there is.
sort of, you see things, maybe affects a certain type of organization that then is sort of fed into your team, and then you can kind of adapt and improve things, can't you, as time goes on? So it's a strength in numbers play as well as more customers on board, I guess.
It is. And what you've got to remember as well is we've got customers around the globe. So
Mm,
the SOC analyst that is doing a hunt 9 a.m. in Australia, local
mm,
time, he may find something. And then by the time he's done his triage and his investigation, the output or the product of that hunt benefits all the other Sophos customers globally before you've even woke up and had your coffee for your breakfast every morning. So by having that global presence, we are split across Australia, Asia Pacific, Central Europe, UK, Ireland, East, West, and Central Coast, US, Hawaii. So there's a like you say, a strength in numbers from a customer perspective. That telemetry is coming into the SOC. We don't
mm,
just hunt on one customer environment each time. We hunt
mm,
across a huge data lake or a data set. So
mm.
where I'm looking for a particular command line with a technique or a particular craft of command line that the attacker's using, I can do that across all 25,000 customers all at once.
Wow.
And then I can suddenly go, right, that customer there in Sydney, we can see it. Why are we not seeing it elsewhere? Or it could be a geolocation type
Yeah.
scenario where we're seeing an attacker going after very specific organizations only in a specific geo region. The Pacific Rim was a classic example with the firewalls. We knew certain firewalls had gone into China, so
Mhm.
using that telemetry from those firewalls, we could see that they were solely targeting a specific kind of region.
Wow. Yeah.
So it's
Amazing.
no different on the endpoint, to be fair. Um, so yeah, as kind of then we get into this sort of second bit of the dashboard where it's actually showing effort in your environment or in your estate. So this would be the hours so 312 hours that the SOC has spent in Alistair's network, for example, doing hunts and stuff. 10 hunts conducted, 10 new detections from that hunt. To give you a kind of an idea.
So I think again for a board report, that for me, or something where you can use that to share internally with the stakeholders, that to me justifies why you have an MDR solution, doesn't it? It says, look, 10 times this could have
Absolutely.
been good, could have been something that's gone, horribly wrong. And again, it's just that justification to say, look, this is why we set this up, and that peace of mind that this is going on in the background. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the sort of thing that we get from those hunts as well. So again, you can go, I remember my supplier saying I run their software, and a bit like you're saying, the peace of mind thing. Well, am I vulnerable to that specific attack technique or whatever? And as part of that hunt process, we're not just looking at your organization, but we're looking at maybe across a good section of, we know that X number of customers use that particular, I don't know, voice over IP phone system or whatever it might be, uh, uh, print print service or something, where we're hunting those, and we can go, yeah, we can see that you run that software, but we're not seeing any evidence of that technique being used against you at this moment in time. Or actually, yes, 2 o'clock last night, we did see an attempt, but the bad guy was thwarted because the Sophos agent did its thing. So just make sure you go patch it or do whatever. So as a result of that hunt and that technique discovery, yeah, we can say you're good, you're safe, you're not vulnerable yet. Don't patch it just yet. If you patch it, you go to the next version, you will be vulnerable. So you might patch into a vulnerability. Or as I say, you may be currently vulnerable on the version you are, and you need to go patch it.
Yeah.
So various things that you could do from that perspective. So as I say, kind of some of the things that then get kind of unique to your environment, and we can then also show you kind of your, I don't know, your usual suspects. It always seems to be Alistair that creates the most cases on a Monday when he's downloading his dodgy stuff, or he's failing his login, or that kind of stuff. But the number of cases doesn't always necessarily represent the number of escalated cases. So it could be you're one of these fortunate customers, as you can see in my kind of diagram now. You've not had any cases, but that doesn't mean to say we haven't done any investigations. So it could be we've done 25, in the case of my example here, we've done 25 investigations or unescalated cases, but they didn't come to anything because it was just people doing stuff, false positive, Alistair forgetting his password, whatever it might be. So if you've got cases, fine, means we've done some good stuff. But the unescalated cases also means we've done some good stuff. But the house wasn't burning. It was just business as usual. It was the postman knocking at the door.
Yeah.
The dog barked. So just to kind of give you an idea. And then kind of out of hours, sometimes this is a really good justification or a business case. We as an organization go home at the weekend. Can you show me where Sophos have potentially saved our bacon on a Saturday night, Sunday morning? Because we wouldn't have been in as part of normal business. We work Monday to Friday, 9 to 5:30. At the weekend, this is the number of out of hours weekend cases that Sophos have investigated where something bad would have happened come Monday morning. You come walking into the office.
Yeah, and I guess from an ROI perspective, like there's two models, isn't there, you can go with. If you're not an MDR customer, you could look to do this yourself and sort of
Exactly.
hire and have a number of people that would maybe fulfill this role. But again, that comes at a cost. So if you're starting to with this information we have here, we can see how many hours outside of things have happened. If you then want to go and do that yourself, you're paying premium rates, salaries. You probably it's
Exactly. Yeah.
effective ROI model doing it this way, and you get
Yeah.
the sort of people like yourself and all the experts on hand to do that, as opposed to trying to fill that gap doing it yourself with big budgets and high salaries again.
Exactly. Yeah. There's always a question of the sort of build versus buy.
Yeah.
And like you say, you've got to staff it, you've got to recruit. That's the
Mhm.
fun bit. You've got to recruit. And believe me, if a SOC analyst isn't fighting cases 24/7, they're going to get bored pretty quickly. So hence, I don't know, again, maybe part of some of the pre-sales conversations we've had, we've showed you how the SOC analysts do that proactive hunting. They basically rotate round their different roles, what they're doing on a different given day. Again, it's to keep their interest, ups their
Yeah.
skill set, because if all you were ever doing was fighting failed logons, you'd not get the skill or the broad spectrum exposure to malware. So by rotating a team round, they're building their skill set, they're getting exposure to the threat landscapes, they're getting exposure to different tools and techniques and attackers. So if you were to try and build versus buy, you've got to recruit, you've got the skill set to maintain, you've also potentially got to consume some sort of threat intelligence to keep you apprised of the kind of latest and greatest attacks and tools and what bad guys are doing. It makes a kind of even an XDR, if you've got the tools and techniques, you can then maybe water it and feed it yourself and maintain it and respond to the detections. But again, someone's got to sleep. You've got to go home. You've got to have a holiday, and that's where that MDR service comes in 24/7.
Yeah, nice.
Good stuff. I'm conscious of time as well. I think we're we're ticking on quite nicely, but I wanted to give us a chance for questions, and
Yeah,
don't know.
I've been posing quite a lot, so we're not had any questions in yet. So if you want
That's all
to
right.
ask questions, and feel free to. Hopefully, you can see the text box where you can ask questions. So I'll give that a minute or so to see if
Yeah.
anybody wants to ask any. I've not seen any prompt any yet, so I can probably just pick your brain a little bit longer, Alistair, if
Yeah, sure.
whilst we've got you. But yeah, I would say obviously we're seeing maybe in the next sessions we might do a little bit around sort of how we can complement the Microsoft estate. I think that's some sort of way that we're maybe looking, and some of that telemetry we can see if you are an MDR customer with a large sort of Microsoft endpoint estate.
Yeah.
There's some stuff there, isn't it, where we can sort of do enhanced telemetry and see more than maybe what the standard sort of Microsoft suite can offer. Can you just expand a
Yeah,
little on how that might be for a future session and how we maybe go about that?
yeah, sure. So something you probably know if you're an XDR customer, not necessarily 6 because you don't get the integrations. But with an XDR customer or an MDR customer, you get the integrations. I strongly recommend if you're a Microsoft customer, and again, depending on your licensing, depends on what telemetry Microsoft expose on the API. Excuse me. So strongly recommend adding those integrations. The Microsoft integrations are included as part of XDR and MDR. With those APIs, we get an awful lot of good telemetry. So it's a bit like the days of old. You've had a SIEM and
Mm-hmm.
you collect your Windows event logs, your system application and security logs from your servers. Imagine that now, obviously with Entra and all that kind of lovely stuff. We can get that telemetry from those APIs. We can then start looking at, was it Alistair logging in, time over distance? Did he log in from the sunny Bournemouth this morning, or has he logged in from somewhere else within a few extra minutes? We can look at well, again, as I say, depends on what the API, what Microsoft licensing you've got, depends on
Yeah,
what telemetry we can get from the API. Based on that, some of the detections that Microsoft build, and don't get me wrong, it's really good stuff that we can get from that telemetry. Microsoft do expose some quite nice stuff on that API. But what we've done is we've built a few of our own rule sets or detection playbooks based off of a correlation of those detections or telemetry coming from that API. We found some of the Microsoft ones were lacking. So to allow the SOC analyst to do a little bit more context and correlation or cross correlation. So Alistair logged in from Bournemouth. Did we see him 2FA? Yes, we saw him 2FA. He did something else. He shared something over SharePoint. That was whatever. Then something happened on his email. Did he have an inbox rule for something? So building all this cross correlation, we can start building a pattern of actually, is it Alistair or isn't it? Is it a bad guy pretending to be somewhere in the middle?
yes,
Maybe
yeah.
doing that, as I say, that business email compromise. They've set up a forwarding rule. The bad guy's now getting everything that Alistair gets in or out, he sends out of his Outlook. So various things that we can do based on that API. As I say, definitely hook that in. It's included as part of MDR. It's definitely there with XDR. Get that added. It has extra context.
Amazing. So we do actually have a question from Ethan. So what trends have you seen in malicious activity related to the war in Ukraine and the situation in the Middle East since October the 7th last year?
There is quite a bit. I'm not actually able to comment on some of the stuff, to be fair. We do see a lot of uptick in terms of region specific. Certainly in early warning, we're seeing some customers that we've got in that region are getting very interesting techniques. Um, Probably the easiest way to explain it is if I cast my mind back 3 years ago before I even started, um, I was at a previous vendor and I started to look at some of the honeypot technique, honeypot traffic. So in my lab, I run a honeypot here, as you can probably see all this geeky stuff behind me. And that honeypot's exposed to the internet. Bad stuff. Bad stuff happens to it minute by minute. There was a significant uptick, not literally as the war broke out, but maybe months before as well, on that uptick of kind of port scanning, vulnerability scanning, enumeration, doing fingerprinting and fingerprinting of exposed servers or external facing stuff. And I still see that today. Now I'm at Sophos sort of 3 years on. I'm still seeing those techniques done exactly the same way, albeit maybe different tools. Tools are used maybe for a few days and then they shift technique. But principle being, I can still see those techniques and I can still see from my honeypot, um, again, kind of it's a bit like going on Showdown. I don't know if any of you have ever used Showdown or anything like that. You can maybe search for particular vulnerabilities. You can search for exposed or external facing stuff, and you can do it by geo and region. So do see some of those similar techniques. It is prevalent.
Amazing. And you did touch upon your sort of home setup. I think I've got to just probe you, Alistair, for that, because my setup, I have to say, like, yeah, we've been on many calls together, and it's right up there with some of the coolest setup I've seen. I don't know if you want to just quickly
Just
give
tilt
a
the camera. Yeah.
snapshot. Yeah, what's
So
it's
there's a whole raft of stuff going on kind of over there, and I run ESX. I've got labs and stuff. So again, because I'm a forensics IR background, I do a lot of stuff with Sophos Labs and the early warning. NDR, if any of you have ever been on an NDR call, it would either be me or my team doing some of those as well. So in my lab, I run a honeypot system. That's got Sophos at various stages. It's got an NDR on there taking spam tap traffic from the network as well, bringing in all that telemetry. And I can either use it as a firing range as well. I don't know if anyone's ever played with a cyber firing range. It's great fun. Be careful. But basically in the lab, build up a set of machines and or detection capabilities throughout the network stage. So external facing firewall, web application firewall, all that lovely stuff down to an endpoint, and then fire malware through it and see what happens. So you can learn and get those detections and stages. It's no different to what Sophos Labs do in terms of kind of how we build the detection capability. We take a tool, we take the bad guy's technique, we fire it through, and we watch what happens, and then we can build those rules, build that detection capability back into the product.
amazing. Yeah, no, I love it. It makes my office setup. Yeah, I might need to pick your brain on what I need to
So,
do to improve. So I think that probably concludes things for questions. So thank you everyone for joining. I've really enjoyed it, and Alistair, your time is very valuable, and for me
no
that was
problem.
really interesting to see. So there should now be a QR code that will flash up on screen. This is not a phishing attack. We're not trying to catch you out. It is a genuine QR code, and it's for a free recon scan. So if anybody has joined the call today, that's available as part of a free attack surface management and vulnerability tool. So something we're very proud of here at CyberLab. And yeah, we've got loads of other sort of content coming. So we do a podcast. So I listen to that quite regularly when I do my park run or my 5K at my run club. And I find that quite interesting with similar people like Alistair on the podcast. We've got events, so I know that we'll be doing Secure Tour again in the summer, and I know that a few people on the call hopefully found that quite beneficial in Bury when we did it. But yeah, check out our events page because there's lots of great stuff happening. But I just want to, on behalf of myself and everyone at CyberLab, just wish everyone a Merry Christmas and thank you very much for joining. And I hope you had a great call. All right, thank you. Bye bye.
Merry Christmas, everyone. Take care. Bye.